Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So, I'm going to talk about this story out of Brooklyn where you had a Black woman at the Human Resources Administrative Building, um, where they provide human services like food stamps and other types of services for poor people. And this woman had an encounter with the police, and I'm going to go into it in a little bit more detail. I just want to give people time to tune in to this hangout before I get started. And if you all can let me know if you can hear me fine, we'll get started very shortly. I appreciate your support. And right after this hangout, I'm probably going to do one more hangout for today. This shouldn't be a long hangout. Shout out to Lightbearer. Thanks for letting me know that you can hear me fine. So let's get started. So I'm going to share my screen for a second and read a couple of excerpts from these two articles and summarize some of the points in some of the articles. So if you can bear with me 1 second. So as you can see here in Al Jazeera, they have news about this incident that happened at this food stamp office. So you had an African-American woman by the name of Jazmine Headley. She was there to get a child care voucher for her child, so that she could get child care services for her child. She was waiting at this particular office for like 2 hours. And since they didn't have enough chairs, she was sitting on the floor. And apparently someone at this particular location told her that she has to stand, she can't sit on the floor, and she refused to stand. And because of that, they called the police. The police come on the scene, and the police proceed to try to yank her child out of her arms. She has a 1-year-old son. That's a 1-year-old son, and the police were basically in a tug of war with this woman, trying to take her child from her. She wasn't complying with their instructions and everything. And a lot of people obviously were horrified. I would show the video, but I just don't want to deal with copyright issues and trying to fight it and saying it's fair use and all that kind of stuff. But I do have links to both of these articles in the description box so that you can check it out for yourself. But I'm going to read some of these excerpts. So it says, a video showing police officers violently yanking a toddler from his mother's arms at a Brooklyn food stamp office last week prompted outrage, with public officials expressing horror and the clients of the facility complaining it is indicative of how the city treats social services recipients. It says that they confronted Jazmine Headley, because she was sitting on the floor, and police were called when she refused to leave, as I said before. And, the woman was laying on the ground, face down on the floor. There was a tug of war over the child. The child was screaming during this whole incident. And the woman was begging for the police to get off of her. And what happened is, after this incident occurred, this woman was charged with obstructing government administration, resisting arrest, endangering the welfare of a child, and trespassing. And as of Monday morning, she was held in jail in Rikers Island, from what I understand, on a warrant for her arrest in New Jersey. So according to the prosecutor, they say that they did not request any bail. They were not holding her in connection with what happened at this particular place, but it was based on a warrant out of New Jersey. And they said that they were reaching out to the authorities in that state to expedite her release. And so that was the situation initially. Now, I read in another article that the charges have been dropped against Ms. Headley, and we understand why the charges were dropped, because this is an outrageous situation. After this video went viral And after all these people complained about it, they decided to drop the charges, because what we have here is a ridiculous situation. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second. Just bear with me 1 second. This situation is absolutely ridiculous, for a number of reasons. First of all, the police should not have been called simply because a woman is sitting on the floor. They didn't have enough chairs. And it's a shame that they did not have enough chairs to accommodate the people at that facilities. Nobody should have to stand for 2 hours waiting to get served. So calling the police over something as silly as that is absolutely asinine. It's absolutely ridiculous. The police should not be called for those types of services when you have major things actually going on, when you have actual crime going on in New York City. The police should be directing their attention to those types of things, directing their attention to the drug dealers, to the gangsters, to the, people engaged in violence, people engaged in other types of serious criminal activity. Police resources should not be wasted, grabbing some woman simply because she wanted to sit down instead of standing for hours. And, this treatment just shows like the disrespect that poor Black people receive in this society. The fact that they felt like they were entitled to call the police on this woman simply because she was sitting on the ground when they refused to provide her with a chair. This is absolutely ridiculous. It's ridiculous that things escalated to this point where you have a woman arrested for something minor, such as sitting on the floor, where they trump up all these charges on her, again, charging her for obstructing government administration, resisting arrest, endangering the welfare of a child, and trespassing. They're charging her with endangering the welfare of a child, but really it was the police who endangered the welfare of that child by literally trying to yank that child out of the mother's arms. They were jeopardizing that child's safety. And it's just crazy that something like this would happen, man. It's like what happens is in this society, poor people are stigmatized and completely disrespected, man. Nobody should be treated like this. Nobody should be put in a situation where police are called upon them simply for sitting down on the floor in a building when there are no chairs provided. This is absolutely crazy. And there are several things that come to mind when I looked at that videotape, and I encourage you all to check it out. One thing that's very troubling is that you have what appears to be like African-American officers involved in this incident, actually participating in the oppression of a Black woman. You have Black women officers participating in this police misconduct. And it's just a reminder that often some of our own people play the role of overseer on the plantation. Some of our own people play the role of agents of oppression, agents of white supremacy. And you have these police officers, engaging in this unnecessary, excessive use of force in a situation that's completely ridiculous. I mean, nobody should have to go through this for this simple type of failure to stand up when, somebody tells them to stand up. This is absolutely ridiculous. Seeing them rip that baby, that 1-year-old son from the mother's arms, made me think about slavery, like how children were literally ripped from their mother's arms and sold off. And it's just a shame that here you had a mother incarcerated for a few days over something very minor, such as sitting on the ground. She wouldn't have been locked up if it wasn't for those people calling the police. And this is just a reminder that, like, calling the police is not always a good idea. I mean, especially for something minor. When you call the police, you are jeopardizing people's lives. You are jeopardizing people's safety. Often when the police are called, you end up with a situation where somebody is brutalized by the police, or even worse, killed by the police. So like, calling the police should be a very last resort, and it should only be for something serious, where somebody's safety is in jeopardy or something to that effect, not for some silly thing such as somebody sitting on the ground. So this is an outrage, and it's just a shame, as it was pointed out in this article, that the New York Police Department and the New York police continue to engage in this type of excessive use of force, following, the Eric Garner situation, where this brother was doing something very minor, allegedly selling cigarettes illegally. And because of that, the brother ends up being choked to death. And here we have a situation where a woman is simply sitting on the ground, and it escalates to a point where you have these police restraining her, and pulling her child from her arms. This is just absolutely ridiculous, man. Absolutely ridiculous. And another thing that needs to be raised, dealing with this whole situation is just the role of the mother. Like, I understand like that she was frustrated. I understand that somebody will get tired of standing, for hours, standing for 2 hours waiting for services. I understand that very well. And it is an indication of just the lack of resources that this particular office had. They should have had plenty of chairs. They should have been more efficient so that they could service the clients that come to that particular office in a timely manner. So in this situation, somebody's waiting around for hours. So I understand her frustration, but I don't understand why she could not just, comply with what they were asking her to do. I mean, regardless of the fact that she didn't comply, that does not justify the police being called in the first place. It doesn't justify the police action. But all of this could have been avoided if she simply just listened to what the people were saying and just stood up. Her child wouldn't have been in jeopardy, and the situation wouldn't have escalated if she simply just complied. But regardless of that, the police are dead wrong. What they did was wrong. It jeopardized the safety of the child and the mother over something very frivolous. So, yeah, so I just wanted to express my outrage about this situation, and I want to hear from y'all. What do y'all think about this situation, man? So let me check with the comments before I sign out and go on to the next quick hangout. I want to thank y'all for tuning in. Shout out to Lightbearer. Shout out to Bonafide 1970. Peace to you. Shout out to Love and Kisses 48. And Bonafide 1970 said, as a side note, I have to say, if I was there and if I was sitting down as a black man, I would have given the sister my seat. In addition to doing the right thing, that's the right thing to do, basically. That's what he's Bonafide 1970 is saying. It might have prevented this whole incident. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's something that brothers could have done. And I know that a lot of times, like in a place like this, a lot of the people that are there is primarily women and children that are at these types of offices. But I'm sure that there had to have been some brothers there that could have given up their seat and just allowed the sister to sit down and stand up. I think that people should exercise that kind of courtesy. But unfortunately, a lot of people don't, especially in a place like New York City. A lot of people are not as polite as they are in other places, like in the South, for instance. A lot of people are like more like they have that gentleman type of mentality, or they're more courteous. They have that Southern hospitality type of mentality. But in New York, it's like an every man for himself type of mentality, and people tend to be more rude in New York City. So this doesn't surprise me that nobody stood up, but people should have stood up, and I think that they should have stood up and just let her sit down, and this would have avoided the whole situation. But again, this situation could have been avoided, if the people at that particular location didn't escalate it to the point where they got to call the police. I mean, that's just absolutely stupid. And they shouldn't even ask the woman to stand up in the first place. She should have had every right to sit down at that place. And on another note, as I said before, the woman could have simply stood up to avoid this situation where her child is being pulled from her arms and where, she ends up getting arrested for a couple of days over, whether or not she's going to sit down or stand up. So, there is some kind of blame uh, on the mother's part and the authorities part, but it's mainly on the authorities. They were clearly in the wrong here. There's no justification for what those police did, and it's just a shame. You would think that black female officers would be able to identify with this mother and would have been able to communicate with her and resolve the situation, de-escalate the situation. It shouldn't have never have gotten to this level where you had this type of situation unfold, where a child is being tugged by the police and the mother, and you have the mother screaming and a lot of people disturbed by the incident. It just shows that you still have a lack of progress in the New York Police Department. And it speaks to a need for more activism, more advocacy to end these types of abusive police practices. So let me see what you all are saying. Yes, it was caught on videotape. Be intellectual. For those of you who have not seen the footage, again, I will have links to 2 articles in the description box showing the footage and also going into more detail about the story. And it's just something else. Like, it's hard. People are in a dilemma, when they see this types of stuff unfold. Like, it's like, since it's the police, it's difficult for somebody to directly intervene in that situation because they can be arrested or killed by the police. Uh, but it's just, I'm glad that there was somebody there to capture the whole incident on video, because that's very important. It's important, if any charges are filed against these police officers, you have evidence, if any like disciplinary action is to be taken, it helps to have, the footage of this particular incident. And this speaks to, again, the need for video cameras, body cameras on police, so all this stuff can be documented. And it's important for us as citizens to be vigilant. And if we see any kind of incidents of police brutality or police misconduct, we should videotape it from a safe distance. So let me see what people are saying before I sign out. I want to thank y'all for tuning in. Yeah, so Bonafide 1970 said he wouldn't have thought twice about giving her his seat, being that she had a baby. Yeah, I mean, that makes it even more important, like that she had a child with her. Yeah, it's just common courtesy, man. I think that people should have done that, and that whole situation would have been avoided, man. But anyway, I want to thank y'all for tuning in. Um, but before I, go, I'll just say this. I think this whole situation epitomizes the way poor Black people are treated. It epitomizes the way Black women are disrespected by the system, period. Often we focus on, the abuse of Black men, because I think that more often Black men are the targets of police brutality, but also Black women are victims as well. And we need to bring attention to all cases of police brutality involving our people, whether it's Black men or Black women. So with that, I'm going to say peace and blessings. I want to thank you all again for tuning in. Please rate, comment, and subscribe. Like the video, share the video, hit the notification bell so that you will know when I post new content. Peace.